I'm thrilled to announce and introduce today's keynote speaker, Karie Kaufmann, a high-powered executive business coach who helps companies and business leaders grow and succeed both personally and professionally. Karie was recently inducted into a Global Coaching Hall of Fame. She's consistently recognized for getting her clients outstanding results and really involved in her local community, which I especially think is an admirable trait for anyone in a leadership position. We're thrilled Karie could join us today. When she spoke at the ASI Power Summit a couple of years ago, she earned incredibly high marks from all the attendees there, so we're happy to have her back. So keep your pen and pad handy to jot down her tips and strategies, or have a window open to take some notes. Post your questions in the stage chat, and we'll answer as many as possible at the end. Important to remember, use the stage chat, not the event chat. The event chat's for everyone to see. The stage chat's for all of us that are in this event. If you have any audio problems like echoing or feedback, close any hop-in tabs you might have open, except for the keynote tab. Now let's welcome Karie Kaufmann to the stage. Karie, welcome.
Hi, Tim. Thanks so much for having me today. Let me go ahead and get my slides shared here. All right. Excellent. So congratulations to all of you for carving out the time to treat your business like your most important client today. By the end of our time together, in just a very short 50 minutes, I'm going to try to cover as much ground as possible while allowing time for questions. But by the time you leave here, you're going to know how to break the COVID slump that you might be feeling. I'm going to give you some ideas to generate momentum in your business. And hopefully by the end of our time together, you will leave here feeling like you know what it takes. You have some momentum, some advice, some tools that you can make 2021 different and better than your previous years. So what I'll ask of you today is that you just take the next 50 minutes and continue to treat your business like your number one client. That means stay focused, take some notes, be attentive, and just give yourself and your business that respect. Because if you treat your business like your number one client, your business will treat you like your number one client. It will take care of you in return. So also, if you get some good ideas, as Tim mentioned, put them in the stage chat. If you have any, what I call blinding flashes of the obvious, or you have any questions. I'd also love if you'd connect with me. All my social media profiles are right there. So I'd love to hear your feedback. So connect with me on social media as well, and let me know what you think of this workshop today. So now when we think about heading into the unknown, still in a maybe what might be a perilous time for some of your businesses, I thought back to some people who have maybe experienced this before. Here's an audacious version of this. D-Day, possibly the most audacious, well thought out plan in the history of mankind. We were talking 5,000 ships at the Normandy landing, over 1 million people. They estimated that the paratrooper casualties alone could be as high as 75%. I mean, they were making decisions. This plan was 3 years in the making before they actually executed. They were making decisions about how many hundreds of thousands of men are we going to let die, right? Trying to minimize that number. So constant course corrections through this 3-year planning process, even up until the moment that it took place. In fact, D-Day was actually supposed to happen originally 2 days before it actually did, but the weather was terrible and conditions were even more dangerous, so they ended up postponing. So here's the thing. This kind of puts our plans in perspective, right? I don't know about you, but I haven't had to make any decisions about that impact other human lives anytime really ever, especially not in my business. So even Dwight D. Eisenhower, the mastermind of this whole planning process over these several years, he was quoted as saying, plans are nothing. Plans are useless. Planning is everything. So how I put this to my clients is, you write your principles in pen, those don't change, but your plans, we put on Post-its. And I'm not joking about that. We literally use Post-it notes when we're working on our plans. So today we're going to talk about some longer term perspective with growing your business, but we're also going to talk about some very short term strategies that are meant to generate momentum in your business. Because the truth is, we have no freaking idea what this year is going to hold. We just don't. We can make our best guesses. We can plan as well as possible. But this is why we do short-term planning with my clients that connects to longer-term goals, because we're constantly acting, then you assess, you adjust, and then you repeat that cycle. Learn what you can, adjust, and keep going forward. So there's 3 main points I'm going to cover today. Here's the first one. You are in a well-established industry, an old industry. I'm going to challenge you to new thinking. Now, I know your industry was hit pretty hard over the past year. You were down $5 billion industry-wide. And that might even be, for some of you, the impact might have felt even greater because some of you were able to pivot into the PPE that prevented that impact from being even bigger than it otherwise would have. And now here we are, it's February. It's supposed to be one of your peak seasons of trade shows and annual kickoffs and conferences and all these things. And a lot of them just aren't happening. So it's easy to think, well, crap, that's just the way it is. But I'm here to say something to you that my coach said to me last March. He said, where there's poop, there's fertilizer. Actually, that's not what he said. He used a different word choice. But you get the point. There is always opportunity, even in the face of lots of mess and lots of adversity. So your industry has not gone away entirely. I mean, I know it's had a significant hit, but that's on a macro level. And the truth is, most of your businesses don't operate in a macro economy. You operate in a micro economy. You work with real people in real business situations who still have needs. So I'm going to not use that word. I already used it once. I'm not going to say it again. It's that P word, the word people like to use in 2020 when they wanted to sound smart. I mean, you know the one, right? If you watch much TV in the 90s, and you probably have this Ross Geller image moving a sofa up the stairs every time you hear it. So I'm going to stay away from that word again. Instead, I'm going to hit you with some neuroscience. How's that? Here's what we know about neural networks. A neural network, which is what our brain, composed of our brain, is a series of algorithms that recognize relationships in information, in data. So this is kind of how AI works, artificial intelligence, to mimic the brain. So let's say, for example, you wanted to teach an artificial intelligence machine what a cat was. What you would do is you would feed it pictures of cats. Constantly feed it pictures of cats, and it starts to recognize relationships in data and learn what that thing is. So it says, okay, whiskers, pointy ears, fur, paws, this is a cat. So you feed it lots of pictures of cats. It says, okay, I know what a cat is now. I recognize the relationships in this data. Then you feed it a picture of a dog, and the artificial intelligence goes, whiskers, pointy ears, fur, paws, it's a cat, right? It draws the wrong conclusion based on what we've programmed it with, because it draws its relationship to this data that this and this must be the same. Now, okay, this is mimicking the human brain. Artificial intelligence is created to mimic how our brains actually work, which means we do the exact same thing on some level. In the human brain, this shows up as like a cognitive bias. Or think about it this way. Once you have a belief's only job is to validate its existence. So neuroscience tells us that once we have a thought in our head, when you have a thought and you hold it in your mind for as little as 17 seconds, it begins to affect particle energy in your body. And we take that emotion that we have attached to that thought and we project it onto everything else. Okay? So this is why we get that feeling of when it rains, it pours, because we take that emotion and it clouds the lens. It tints the lens with which you see everything else. Now, I'm not a law of attraction kind of coach. Frankly, I think there's a lot of power in that, but I think there's a lot of people who leave the action out of attraction, and that's just not me. But here's what I do believe to be true about the law of attraction is you find what you're looking for, okay? You find what you're looking for. You program your brain with certain types of information, with certain news, with data, and we prove it to ourselves. And then guess what? We find more things that validate that belief. I also believe you move towards what you think about. When you think about teaching a child to ride a bicycle, and you kind of get them off on 2 wheels for the first time, and you say, okay, Just watch out for the tree. And the kid's going, watch out for the tree, watch out for the tree, watch out for, and they steer straight into the tree because you move towards what you think about, or as Tony Robbins puts it, focus goes where energy flows. So I have a reflection question for you. You're welcome to type your responses into the stage chat if you'd like to share, or you can answer this on your notes. But here's your question. If you knew 10 months ago, we'd be here now, wherever your business is right now, what would you have done differently? Because hindsight is 2020, right? So what did you wait on? What did you put off? What action do you wish you would have taken? And I'd love to hear from a couple of you. Delegate more, okay? Get started sooner. Move into new marketplaces. Lots of things we can think of in hindsight. But this isn't about regrets, because sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. It's only a loss if you don't get the lesson from it. So here's the next driving question for you. If you knew that 12 months from now, we'd still be here, wherever you are right now. Hopefully we won't. What if we were? What could you do now? Because here's the thing. I believe, you're allowed to disagree with me, I believe your industry struggles from legacy thinking. Now, there's a lot of wonderful benefits that come with being in a well-established, well-respected industry, but innovation often isn't one of them. Innovated products, absolutely. Innovated in ways of thinking, not always the case. Because sometimes we resign too quickly into, this is just what it is, or this is the way it has to be, or I don't have any control over that. But if you were a startup, and probably most of you aren't, maybe some of you are, but if you were a startup and you had the resources that you have now, you had the knowledge and the experience, but you're new to this game, what would you do differently? How did Netflix disrupt Blockbuster? How did, Microsoft was busy in the early 2000s trying to make a superior MP3 player to the iPod. And you know what? They did it. Their digital music player, MP3 player, by most measurements, was a better product. Meanwhile, Apple was busy creating the iPhone. So while Microsoft was looking at their competition saying, how can we beat the competition? Apple had moved on and they were innovating. They were creating an entire new playing field. So when you chase your competitors, the best you can get is to beat them by a little bit, right? But then what? Then what are you going to do after that? So now I think most of you are probably sitting at your computers. Maybe you're at an iPad or a phone, but if you got a keyboard in front of you, if you look down at it, you're probably using what's called a QWERTY keyboard, which is, the top 6 letters on the first row of your keyboard look like what's on the screen. QWERTY, QWERTY keyboard. Now, why does the keyboard look like this? I did a little bit of research, and there's a couple of theories. I really don't know for sure. A couple theories that I read one was it was meant, they jumbled the letters to slow down typists to keep the keys from jamming when typewriters were new. Another theory said that it was based on the advice of Morse code translators because it, I guess, made it easier to translate Morse code. Now, since this time that the QWERTY keyboard has been invented, loads of other designs have also come out that are in a different order, laid out completely differently, that are actually proven to make typing faster and easier for people. Yet here we are, 140 years later, using a keyboard designed to solve a problem that no longer exists. Why do we do that? Right? So here's a test for you to measure whether or not you're really thinking proactively, whether or not you're really playing to win, right? Or if you're just playing to, beat the competitors, or just playing not to lose, right? Trying not to lose too badly. So here's a measurement. Here's another action step for you that I want you, I'm a coach. You got to engage a little bit here. So the formula for success, I want you to rate yourself on each of these 5 things on a scale of 1 to 10. So starting with dreams, on a scale of 1 to 10, how clear are you on what's your dream result for 2021? And even beyond, right? Dreams are starting at this year, right? But they go much bigger than that. It's connected to a bigger purpose for yourself. How clear are they? How compelling are your dreams? How much do your dreams actually get you out of bed in pursuit of the day-to-day because of where you're going and what you're dreaming of? On a scale of 1 to 10, give that category number. Same for your goals. Now, a goal is, as I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, a goal is a dream with a deadline, meaning that now you translate it into something that's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, there's a result attached to it in a time frame. So it's breaking down the dreams into a measurable result towards the dream. The learning. Who do you need to become? What do you need to get better at? What competencies will you need that you don't currently possess? As I often tell my clients, you are perfectly equipped to run your current business. And that's it. If you want to run a different business, a better business, a bigger business, you need to grow in order to get there. Your business is designed to get its current results because that's the way you've designed it. So if you want to get further, you got to deconstruct some of that and learn and make that plan accordingly. So give yourself a score on the learning, then on the planning. Do I actually have the action plan in place? And I don't mean the big picture, theoretical, strategic plan, although those are important, but I mean, what's the action plan that we know as a team, day to day, week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, this is what we're doing to achieve the result. And then last one on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your level of action? Not just intention, but your level of action, okay? Now here's how it turns into a formula, is you got to multiply those numbers. And I see in the chat, most of you are kind of giving yourselves B's and C's, all right? So multiply all those together. Your number that you gave yourself in each of the 5 categories, what's the total that adds up to for you? Because I'll tell you what, there's a total possible score of 100,000. If you were 10 out of 10 in all 5 areas, you would have 100,000 points. So what's the delta? Meaning, how clear are you? Are you thinking in your old ways, or are you actually thinking in the new ways? And if you don't like the score that you gave yourself, which of those 5 variables needs the most work? Okay. Here's the second point for you. Increase your influence in your marketplace. Now, we're going to get a little bit more nitty-gritty for a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more tactical stuff. Specifically, I want you to target really smart. This is not the time to be targeting broadly. This is the time to know who your core customer is. And by core customer, I mean who really values what you offer, who's willing to buy at a profit, who has the ability to buy multiple times or refer. Because it costs 6 to 10 times more to get a new customer than it does to keep or grow one that you've already got. So here's what I know from working with other industries, because I work with a lot of different industries as an executive coach. In other words, I work with your clients, okay? I work with a lot of the businesses that you are trying to reach. And they are asking me, what can we do? What should we do? Because they've got the same issues you do. They're also trying to stay in touch with their customer base. They're also trying to boost their sales pipelines and retain their existing clients, or take good care of their team members, or create a world-class experience for the people that they're serving. And they're asking me. And of course, I have referred several of them to ASI members, obviously. But this is your time to really get niched on your target market. Get creative, make suggestions, and take this opportunity to wow them. I'm going to give you a model for kind of crafting your marketing message. And I got this from a friend of mine. I'll give him credit. His name's Talking More. He's a coach in Australia. So he shared this framework with me a handful of years ago, and it completely changed my marketing, and I've shared it with all of my clients since then. So here's what it looks like. You've got this framework that ranks what people want to move away from and what they want to move toward. Okay, we could call this dissatisfaction, what they're frustrated with, and their vision with what they want instead. You could call this stick and carrot, right? So what do they want? What do they not want? What do they want instead on the spectrum? But then you add the dimension of time with what do they want to move away from right now versus, what they want to move away from or move toward in the future. So think about it this way, what they want to move away from right now, these are their frustrations. So make a list for your core customer. What are their frustrations? Be as specific as possible. Make as complete of a list as you can think of. But then if you take a frustration and you project it out into the future, that becomes a fear. Because we take, remember the neuro pathways, right? The relationship between data that we assume. So we think, gosh, if we don't get this figured out, if we don't, accomplish this goal, if we don't remove this roadblock, what's it going to mean in the future? What's the impact going to be to me or to my business? So we can kind of catastrophize to some extent. So there's frustrations and there's fears. Then you move towards what do they want instead? What are they moving towards? And in the present, this is their list of wants. What do they want instead? Right now they have this frustration. What do they just wish if they had a magic wand that they could have in the short term? When you take that into the long term, you project it out over time, it becomes an aspiration. Now, I did this, I'm actually right now, over the past couple of weeks, I've been doing this exercise with the client. And they did it on 2 different target audiences that they serve. And what we're looking for out of this exercise is, where can we compete, where we can add value? And if we don't already have a competitive advantage in one of those areas, how could we create one? So it's leading to bigger picture strategy, because we're talking about what kinds of investments should we be making into the business? What core competencies do we need to compete that maybe we don't have right now, or we don't have them consistently, that would give the company that X factor advantage. But even in the short term, this is key to unlocking your marketing language, because if you can accurately identify what they really want, what they really don't want, and your marketing can speak directly to that, you've unlocked the key to getting them to pay attention. So here's a couple questions that you can take back to your team for brainstorming. One is, what would we have to promise that would make us the obvious choice? And for brainstorming purposes, don't put limitations on this. Don't think about what's practical or what's realistic or how much money it's going to cost or how much bandwidth it's going to take. Start big. You'll have no problem whittling it down later. But start with the magic wand, the big picture thinking. What would have to happen for them to be willing to pay a premium to work with our company? Even if they could get comparable products from somebody else, what would make them want to pay more? Maybe be willing to pay 10 or 20% more than our the next competitor in line because of the value we bring. What would make them so compelled that it would influence them to buy, even if it wasn't in their budget? Like, it would literally interrupt them. And by the way, this is how about 40% of business decisions are made, right? Because we make decisions emotionally, because they might think, well, gosh, we really didn't have the budget set aside for this, but you're right. If we can get that result, we'd be crazy not to make this investment. So take those 3 questions back to your team and brainstorm with them. What could we do? What would our brand promises have to be? What core competencies would we have to create? Because the truth is, you are in a lot of piles of good intentions right now. Customers that you've talked with, people you've given quotes to, people you have networked with and interacted with, and they take your information, maybe they take your quote or they take your ideas, and they settle into what Jim Rohn calls the law of diminishing intent, which means that the longer, the focus wanes, and then it's 10 times harder to re-engage them and get yourself out of that pile of good intentions. But those piles of good intentions, you probably have them too. I mean, how many things are there in your business or in your life that you genuinely want and need to do? You just haven't taken action on it yet. So there's ways that you can connect with people, and there's reasons that you can connect with people. So if you're doing your follow-up, get as creative as possible. And you guys are a very creative industry, so I know you'll be good at this. But how can you break free of that pile of good intentions? Oftentimes, I'll give you a little tip. Oftentimes, it's by following up with something that has nothing specifically to do with your products or with your services. It's a little touch point. It's a little, hey, I saw this and thought of you. That might not even have anything to do with your industry. But if you're just sending the emails, hey, just checking in, just wanted to follow up, nobody really likes that anyway, right? You hate doing that. They hate receiving that. So get a little bit more creative with how you touch them. Is it email? Is it phone call? I mean, you guys are the kings and queens of the stay in touch campaigns. But get a little bit more creative to break free. If you know that you're in somebody's pile of good intentions, what can you do to re-engage them and build momentum? Because the thing with momentum is it works in two directions. Momentum can work for you and momentum can work against you. It can give you a tremendous advantage. There's nothing like somebody who's picking up a little steam. They're feeling good. Their energy is high. They're unstoppable in that season. And then there's other seasons that maybe you've been beat up a little bit. Maybe it feels like nothing's going your way and that momentum works in the opposite direction. But if you can take the action to generate a positive momentum, Nick Vujicic puts it like this: action creates momentum, which in turn creates unanticipated opportunities. And I don't know why, but this is always true. Every time I have a client who takes massive action, they commit and take massive action, they always get a result. Here's the funny thing though, the result does not always show a direct correlation to the action that they took. They might be planting seeds over here, and meanwhile, something sprouts from up behind them. That's maybe from a seed that they planted weeks, months, or years ago. But the thing is, action creates momentum because timing is everything. Timing is everything. And the Greeks have two words for time. They have the word chronos and the word kairos. Chronos time. Chronos is like chronological time, which means things happen in time as we know it, chronologically in a sequence. There's an order, there's steps that you follow over time. Kairos time is a time for opportunity. It's the opportune time, the time to take action, the time to do something different, right? The time to recognize when there's poop, there's fertilizer, the time to see new opportunities. But the thing is, the bigger your company is, or even as an individual, the more accustomed you are to the way you do business. You're competent in your area. You've been doing it for a while. The less likely you are to recognize Kairos opportunities because we're programmed with the way things are, the sequence, what the timing says, staying in order. This is the reality of our situation. This is what's going to happen. This is how much more time it's going to take before things go back to normal. But if you're paying attention to it, those Kairos opportunities exist if you're looking for them because now is the time. So I'm sure you've heard it said, time is your most valuable asset. It's the only non-renewable resource that we truly have in life is our time. Once it's gone, there's no getting it back. There's no multiplying it. There's no creating more of it. So think about what's your time worth? And I actually want you to put a dollar value to it. You don't have to share it in the chat, but you're welcome to. But think about it. What is your time worth? Maybe you have an actual number to that, right? You can divide up how much you make, divided by the number of hours you put in, and you could come up with a number. Maybe you think of it differently. But let's say that you come up with this number. Let's say just to make my math simple, you come up with $100 an hour. My time's worth $100 an hour. If you had to pay in advance for your time to purchase today, what would you do differently? So if your time's worth $100 an hour, alarm clock goes off this morning, shell out $2,400. I got to purchase today so that I can live it. How would you use your time differently so that by the end of the day, you have made that value back? What would you delegate? I saw people mentioning earlier that they would have delegated sooner. What would you eliminate that maybe is a distraction? It's taking you off of your core focus, that you're trying to do too much and going a mile wide, but only an inch deep. What would you focus on? What would you focus on instead if you had to pay for it in advance? It's a very challenging question, right? It really can challenge you to, am I really investing my time where it matters most? Because as John Dryden said, first we make our habits, then our habits make us. So it's those day-to-day decisions that really matter. And that's why the key to momentum is short-term. The key to momentum is not long-term strategic thinking. The key to momentum is short-term activity-based goals. And for today, I will challenge you to let your short-term equate to perhaps 10 days, 10-day goals, a short-term sprint. Now, if you were in a big company, you're probably thinking, Karie, we have got our eye beyond the next payroll, right? We've got our eye on the quarter, on the year, and on beyond. Yes, absolutely you should. But those are lagging indicators. What do the leading indicators tell you that your company's success is how it's going to be predicted over time? Because your company's success is rooted in activity. So it's back to the basics, y'all. It's back to the short term, the sprints. Keep the energy high. You can do anything for 10 days. So what team challenge, client challenge, brainstorming session, activity-based goals can you set for yourself or for your team over the next 10 days just to generate momentum, just to move it forward a couple of yards? And then when you do that, you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. So think about time, right? Here we are today, and then there's this kind of invisible line, and at some point in the future, we will wind up at December 31st, 2021. So think about, you're there, December 31st, 2001. What is the best case scenario for your business? What is the champion level result that you want to achieve? And I actually want you to write this down in your notes. Your champion level result by the end of the year, meaning that it's been your best year ever by whatever measurements you want to put on that. If that's revenue and profit, if it's quality of life, it's the health of your team, the percentage of A players you've got, the types of clients that you're working with. Write down a few of those variables. What would just make this? You'd look back and say, man, 2021, what a year. What a banner year it was. And then step that down just a bit. What would be a pretty good result? What would the pretty good result be? Meaning, okay, I feel pretty okay. We may have missed a few of our big goals, but I feel content with how far we've come. Take it a step down from there. What would be a disappointing result? I mean, you'd be a bit bummed out. You'd be a bit, disappointed, not catastrophic, but you just really had hoped for more this year. Be a little bit down on your energy if you had this result. And then what would a disaster look like? What would make 2021 a complete disaster for your business? For some of you, that might mean that it's a repeat of 2020 or that you haven't changed. You're still where you are, right? So if you think about those levels, you'll fall somewhere on that spectrum: the champion result, the pretty good result, disappointing result, or a complete disaster. So from today, I mean, if you think about projecting out over the course of the year, over the next 11-ish months, that's a big difference. There's a big wide gap between your best case scenario and your worst case scenario. But if you scale that back to the next 10 days, that gap is very, very small. What you do now is only insignificantly important compared to the trajectory that will put you on over time. As Jim Rohn would say, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines repeated consistently. And failure is nothing more than a few bad disciplines or lack of the good activity repeated consistently over time. Not everyone's going to win in 2021. I hate to say it, but it's true. But the doers will. Those who are willing to put these things into action, to challenge their thinking, to refine their marketing message and their core competencies to have more influence in the marketplace, and those who build momentum and don't stop, to take the short-term goals and connect them to the long-term goals. Now, I'd love to hear any key takeaways or questions. I'll invite Tim to rejoin me here because we've got actually even finished a couple minutes early, so we have some extra time. And I'm your coach for the next 15 minutes. So I hope that you will take advantage of that and ask away. But even if you just have a key, what I call blinding flash of the obvious, which is, I didn't share much earth-shattering stuff today, but I hope you got that aha moment that kind of a reinforcement of something that you already knew, but maybe you haven't been doing, and you're going to get back to the basics. So last reminder, there's my contact information. I thought this picture summed up what 2020 was like. that literally went on my Christmas card, my family Christmas card this year. So I'd love to stay in touch with you. But Tim, I will turn it back over to you to let me know if there's any questions
awesome.
or comments.
Thank you so much. This is such an awesome presentation. So many great comments here and some questions. And first, is there a way to take the PowerPoint up? Then we'll both be a little bigger on the screen, I think. And for the people who have been asking, we are going to have replays of this available, posted in the app. So we'll be sending that information out. Lots of great things. One of the questions you brought up for people to really ponder is the fact that we don't value our time. And what's the psychology of that, I wonder? We certainly hear this among distributors and suppliers. Distributors will spend so much time with a client. There's going to be a very small client. They'll spend much more time on that client than they will on a client that's really going to be a very significant client over time. How do we break ourselves out of that habit? Are there other ways that we can break ourselves out of that habit of not valuing our time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. I think there's a few dynamics at play here. One is we like to equate busyness with productivity. So when we're doing something that keeps us busy, we can convince ourselves we're actually being productive. But you're actually just on a merry-go-round, right? The horse is moving, but it's not actually going anywhere, or a rocking horse. Like you can go as fast as you want, you're still not going to go anywhere. So we can get caught up in what feels urgent, but is not necessarily that important. And that's really easy to do when you're not connected with the longer term goals, when you haven't actually mapped out what are the right activities, who are the right clients, the right target audience to focus on. We can just get distracted with it. Yeah, go ahead.
So as we sort of as we try to break ourselves out of that and all these other bad habits, if a lot of distributors are working either with themselves, maybe a partner, a business partner, maybe a lifetime partner, how do you get other people to get as energized about breaking out and being innovative as you might? People are going to leave this very excited and convinced. How do they then engage their partners, their business partners, their friends, their family in that process as well?
That's another great question. You can't quite go back to your offices or your virtual environments like Moses with the tablets of stone. Like there's going to be some changes around here, everyone. Like it doesn't always go so well with the business partners or with the team. So it starts with you, with your own commitment, like, walk it before you talk it. But I would take some of those brainstorming questions that I shared. Those are very inspiring conversations to have. If you just go back to the team or your business partner and say, what could we do? If money wasn't an object, if we had no limitation of resources, what would it take? What do we wish we would have done? If we thought we'd still be here another year from now, like what action would we take now? And start to engage them just in the thought process and let them come along on that journey. But yeah, you've absolutely got to lead by example. When it comes to that, with the level of activity that you're willing to put in, the level of focus, and that will start to impact other people, because we're definitely influenced by each other's energy. That's how we are as human beings. So if you want to be more influential, communicate with the other people in the way that they need to be communicated with, and have that energy that kind of draws them in, that they can't help to say like, all right, well, Karie hasn't shut up about this yet, so I think she actually means it this time. I think we're actually doing something different. Let's dig in and brainstorm together, because people will like to be a part of the solutions when it's their idea. So if you come back and say, here's our 10 new things and go, 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 and maybe they haven't bought in yet. They haven't had the back thought process that you've had to get where you are now, that they weren't a part of. So you got to kind of bring them along on that journey and involve them in the solution brainstorming
and how do you
process.
involve your clients in that brainstorming process and bring them into that? Because obviously that's an important part of this as well, right? As a distributor, we're trying to reach out to clients and talking about new solutions and new ideas and new ways they should approach their business and their business problems. What are some hints about how to involve your clients in that process as well?
The clearer you can articulate their challenge, the more likely they are to listen to you. So if you come at them with solutions, they may or may not be open or ready to really have that conversation. But if you can describe their challenge or their problem, sometimes even better, you can articulate even better than they can. If you use that exercise that I use with the 4 quadrants, I call that the 4 forces. When you can use their language to say, look, I think that I know this is what you're experiencing in your industry, and I imagine that you're probably facing some challenges and you're really wanting to accomplish X, Y, and Z, but what's getting in your way is A, B, and C. And they're like, that's right. That's exactly where we're at right now. Well, how about we get together? I'd love to see if I can brainstorm with you. Like, I don't know for sure if we're going to come up with the perfect solution, but I'd love to throw some ideas out and see if we might be able to help. That's great. If nothing else, maybe I can give you a few ideas that still might impact your business, right? So you're leading with value. And the way I like to visualize it is if you and your client are on the same side of the table, right? You're not on opposite sides of the table. Like the adversary is not the competition. The adversary is not the budget. The adversary is their challenge. So you engage them together. Like we're working, you and I are on the same team. We're working together to solve that problem, with you / for you. And it becomes a lot more collaborative. And you find yourself getting a little bit less of the sales role, the provider role, the distributor role, and more in the partnership kind of position.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
You're allowing them to really explain to you what their business is about, and you're doing a bit of investigation. That context is really important. No one wants to meet with somebody who has all these preconceived notions about what they ought to be doing for themselves, right? Whether it's a client or a prospect, you need to be in a listening mode quite a lot. And I think we often are talking too much and not listening enough.
Yes.
So competitive advantage. You talked about competitive advantage. We had a couple of questions about, how do I explore my competitive advantage? How do I see myself the way others see me? So how would you go about sort of evaluating a competitive advantage if you were a distributor in our industry?
You could start by asking for feedback. What do your testimonials say? What do your clients tell your salespeople, your customer service people now when they say thank you? Well, what words are they saying? They might give you the answer. But I found sometimes we got to reverse engineer that, because the truth is a lot of companies don't actually have or haven't defined a competitive advantage. Perhaps they have one, they haven't defined it, be more clear on that. So that 4 forces exercise is really helpful. Like the client that I mentioned that we are going through that right now, to be honest, they don't have a tremendous competitive advantage. They're a supplier, different industry, but they're a supplier of electrical supplies, and they can sell pretty much the same thing as everybody else, like to the contractors, to the wholesale clients. So on what basis can they compete? So when we made the list of what frustrations does our target audience have? What are their fears? What would make their lives easier? What would make their jobs easier? What would make their jobs more profitable? And we have to create a competitive advantage where one does not currently exist. So we're asking ourselves, like, if we were to invest money into payroll, let's say that we were to hire a key person or invest in a technology, like even if they don't have the budget for it yet, we're talking sometimes 3 to 5 year, what I call chess moves. These are the strategic moves that over the long haul will give you a massive competitive advantage, even if one doesn't exist today. What could we do that would give us a competitive advantage? And then what's our roadmap to get there? Maybe there's some things we could do right away, get clearer in our marketing message on how we differentiate ourselves. And maybe there's some things that will take a little bit more time or strategic initiatives to get in place. But at least to get you on the right path. That's
great. Awesome. Well, great feedback from everybody. We really appreciate you being here, Karie. It was a pleasure to see you again. And thanks to all of you for joining in. And back to the expo. We're still open until 4 o'clock. We've got great networking from 4 to 5. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.